Chilly morning in Lubbock. Still, the wind is blowing, but we are here with you. Steve Evans and Dave King today hanging out, 770-5790 to reach the show. Dave, you still with me?
I'm with you, Steve.
Joining us on the phone, editor of Quorum Report, Scott Braddock. Scott, you with us this morning?
The famous
I'm
Scott
here. Hello. Test. Are we good to go? It's been
We're
one of
good
those mornings,
to go.
I understand.
Working through a little technical difficulty, but we got you loud and clear. Cold up
Sounds
here
good.
on the high ground of Lubbock. I don't know how it is where you're at. But
I'm in Dallas. It's rainy right now, 65 degrees out there, so a little bit chilly. But get your big coat, get your umbrella. You're good to go.
well, you can smoke a cigar faster in the wind up here in Lubbock than you can in the rain in the 65 at Dallas.
No doubt. Good point.
Scott, we've been talking about windmills and about the debate last night.
About windmills.
So you're
windmills and what?
Your 2 cents in about that.
Windmills and the
It's real hard
debate.
to hear,
So
Dave.
we've got
the windmills.
so much context there.
Alternative sources of energy. It's one of those things where you watch the deal go by and you hear Joe Biden say something like, I think this is pretty close to the quote. He said, I have no intention of banning fracking. That's not going to happen. And then he talked about phasing out the oil and gas industry. It's one of those things where you scratch your head and you say, well, the first part of that makes me think that he must think that Texas is in play, and then the rest of it makes you think that he doesn't think that, right? But most of the time when they talk about fracking, they're really appealing to people in Pennsylvania, not us. So don't get too excited.
Well, and that was going to be my question is when you hear the Democrat Party and the Democrat candidates take an angle that is so anti-Texas, who is it they're talking to? Because, I mean, I don't know, even a Democrat voter in the state of Texas, their jaw had to drop last night when they think about energy independence, especially you go off of the Gulf Coast. We've got a tremendous oil industry there. Of course, West Texas, where the oil boom is. But who is he really trying to appeal to? Because he's alienated a whole bunch of possibly Democrat for Biden voters that may be Democrat for Trump voters. I do think there may be a little bit of swing off those kind of statements.
There might be some. I think that that Vice President Biden could on this particular issue, could take a page out of the playbook of Secretary Clinton, who talked about this in this way. She said, and by the way, what he said last night doesn't conflict with what I'm about to say. They don't have to be people who are suddenly converted from Democratic voters to maybe a Trump Democrat. Whenever Democrats, mainstream Democrats, have talked about moving away from crude oil, it's always been the case that what they're talking about is using natural gas as a bridge to get to the next place that they want to go, which is more wind and solar and those forms of energy. And when I say a bridge, I mean a 10 to 15 to 20 to 30-year bridge to where we want to go with that sort of stuff. And Texas is poised to be a leader in all of that, oil, gas, solar, wind, everything. And so there's no reason that those things have to be in conflict whenever they talk about transitioning to the next thing. And, then you have the Bernie bros and that whole far left crowd where they'll say, well, natural gas, that's just as bad as oil. Number one, it's not. That's silly. Number two, we're not a coal state like some of those places to the northeast. We have some coal here, but not like they do there. We're not dependent on it like they are there. But three, that denies the fact that you can't just flip a switch and say we're going to be on a different sort of, energy system without denying a lot of people very good jobs, and not just the jobs that are directly in the oil and gas industry, but also those jobs that are, sort of the ripple effects of having a healthy oil and gas industry. We have about 350,000, something like that, direct jobs in oil and gas in Texas, but that doesn't get into the millions of jobs that are, created, at least in part, by having a healthy industry for the oil and gas sector. So, look, it's one of those things that is key to the Texas economy, although I would offer this, too. With so many new people voting who don't have anything to do with the oil and gas industry, again, 350K is the number for direct jobs. There are 30 million people or so in Texas, and about 17 million people are registered to vote. As far as the overall attitude of voters, it may not be one of the top things they're thinking about when they go to the polls around here.
Probably not. We did see massive voter registration drives from both parties, both state parties in the state of Texas. When you look at the average roughneck that is Donald Trump's base. Those guys are liberty-loving, gun-toting West Texans, and we know that we call it the West Texas firewall. That we have a lot of offset votes from Austin, Dallas, the blue areas of Texas. How much do you think that base gets energized when? Because a lot of those voters are single issue. No insult meant there, but they're single issue voters. They're looking at their job, their 4x4 pickup, their Glock on their hip, being in jeopardy. Does that energize them? And we probably do see some new voters in the oil industry. Of course, Roughnecks, or that's oil business is a young man's game. We probably do see some new voters emerging in the oil patch. How much does that really energize that West Texas base?
May get them fired up. That the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, Alan West, has been going around and doing some events in rural Texas over the last few months since he became chairman, and talking about the idea that for people in those smaller communities, they really need to turn out at 75% or higher in voting to try to offset what kind of voting is happening in the urban centers and then in the suburban areas of Texas. I was in Collin County yesterday, which, of course, that's where Plano is, and then Denton the day before that. These suburban counties are changing so rapidly. Here's one of the numbers that is just eye-popping, Steve. As somebody who follows all this and is involved with it as you are, listen to this. In Collin County, and I think the other suburban counties, it's not that different, 24.1% of the voters there who have cast ballots so far in early voting, a quarter of them have no voting history. For political professionals, that is frightening. The eyes bulge out of the head, right? Because they just don't know who they are. Are they Republicans? Are they Democrats? Are they people going to split their vote? Are they people who are just going to vote for president and then not cast their ballot in any other race?
And they are not in any polling sample set at all. You can't poll them because you don't know who they are.
Can't poll them, can't figure out who they are. And think about this, too, and we've talked about this a little bit on the West Texas, on the airwaves previously here on KFYO. You look at the fact that there are still 1,000 people moving to Texas every day, even during the pandemic. They're moving to places like that, to Fort Bend County, Collin County, Hays County, Williamson County, et cetera. There are some people who are moving to smaller communities as well, but you and I know that that's not the vast majority of that migration. And the reality is that not only do we not know exactly who they are, where they came from, but they are registered to vote if they drive a car. Everybody checks that little box, whether they're really going to vote or not. And that's part of what's contributing to such high numbers for how many people are registered to vote. But during the pandemic, political campaigns also have been limited in the way they can talk to those voters. It's more difficult to get out and block walk in neighborhoods and really talk to people. It's more difficult to try to find people at community events and things like that. It used to be that you would go to the ice cream day in the park during the summer and register people to vote, or whatever stuff like that happens here in Dallas. And they would turn the whole thing into a voter registration machine. Haven't had as many opportunities to do that and really visit with those people and figure out who they are. There was the Republican effort called Engage Texas, about a $13 million super PAC. They were trying to register people. And, of course, earlier in the year, they folded up their operations. They said they weren't as able to do the things they wanted to do when it came to direct voter contact because of the pandemic, for that couple of months when people were basically locked down.
Absolutely. Republican Party of Texas was hang on just a sec. The Republican Party of Texas was trying to register somewhere around 1.5 million voters. We tried that effort up here in Lubbock and just didn't get the kind of numbers that we turn out.
Right.
But Scott, I would argue that hopefully you'll agree with me that the get the vote out effort and the voter registration effort is what is going to determine how we wind up in the polls. That is the name of the game right now.
Yeah, I think so. And, Republicans have been fired up to do that. One quick sentence, Dave, is this, that Democrats at some point, and I think it was in the last couple of months, they had been telling people that if you vote in person, you're going to get sick with the coronavirus, you're going to spread it to the elderly and all of that. And they were arguing for more mail-in ballot access. But at some point, they realized, the campaign certainly did, they realized they can't tell people they'll die if they go vote and then expect them to do it. And so they have been telling people to get out there and vote. And we see that in the early vote totals. It looks like it's the advantage to the Democrats right now.
Absolutely.
Scott.
Dave?
Yeah, we got to go. It's 8:18. Always good to have you. Enjoy talking
See y'all.
to you every Friday.
Thanks, Dave.
Take care, Scott.